To show you a core location slash maps demo app, which gets into some really interesting things. We're not going to do most of that today, but we'll just get things set up a little bit, and then we can start moving into the advanced stuff on Tuesday. Now, I just called this bikes because my motivating factor for all this stuff is, tracking my bike travels, because that's very important stuff. So I haven't done anything else besides create it called bikes. So let's get started. So this is a storyboard just to make this thing pretty. I probably want to have a cute image. All right. Well, you may differ whether it's cute or not, but it's an image that's appropriate for a bike type app. Okay. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add an image. I've got two of these. Oh, sorry, it's not going to work. I'm going to add it to assets here. And the easiest way to get something into assets is just to drag and drop. Now, you don't want to put it on app icon up there, and you don't want to delete app icon, because app icon is the icon that your application will have. And even if it's empty, which it is right now, you need to have it there. Otherwise, you're going to have all sorts of issues and complaints. Okay, so now I've got that image in there, and I can just come in here and select my image view, go to the attribute inspector, and then I can just select the image that I want. Plug and pass. Yay, done. Okay, what else do I want to have here? I want to have a button to turn on location services. We will put that up here. And I'm not worried about layout constraints and all that sort of stuff right now, just because that's not what I'm concentrating on here. But I do want the dumb thing to look reasonable. Okay, location constraints. What else do I need? I need a label. And the reason is what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to show how to use core services to track where you are. And then I'm going to keep track of how far we go between each of the different ticks of the location service app. So I need a label to display that stuff. I'm just going to make this all the way across here. Make it a little bit bigger. And of course, center justify. All right, so that's it. I mean, it's not going to be very complicated stuff. All right, so everything we're going to do here is going to be in the view controller, pretty much. And in the view controller, we're going to want to actually talk to a location manager. And for this to work, we need to start out by importing core location. Because this isn't something you use on every single app. So I've got core location now, and now what I can do is I can specify that I'm actually going to implement the delegate method for core location. And that's important because I want core location to be able to call back into the view controller. All right, and that's what the delegate method's going to do. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is to, well, let me set up outlets. Come back to the main here. Okay, come back. Okay, so here's my label outlet. Excuse me. I'm just going to call it label outlet. Obviously, you want to have better names most of the time. And then for the location services, this is going to be an action, because this is going to be where we actually have the user tell us to go ahead and request permissions to track location. So call it that. It's an action. The UI button, not that we care about that because we're not actually going to use it. But now that I've done that, I've got those two things specified. So I can go back to one editor again. All right, now we have to have an instance of the core location tracker. And so we're just going to call that thing the location manager. And that's going to be equal to core location manager. exactly what you'd expect. And we're going to use this one instance to do all our referencing. And I want to have another variable here. This is for tracking the locations, because remember, I want to be able to track how far I go between each individual pole of the GPS. So I got to keep track of where I was before. And this is going to be a CL location. And I don't know if it's going to exist, so it's going to be an optional. And that is not the right syntax. But that's a good syntax. Okay, so coming down here in view did load, this is where we're going to set up stuff. And in here, there isn't a huge amount to do. We've already decided or instantiated the location manager. But since this is a delegate here, we have to actually specify that location manager's delegate is going to be us. So location manager delegate equals self. All right, so now this location manager that we've created right up here is going to understand that this view controller is the delegate, and it's going to call into this view controller for its various different functions that it wants. And I want to set up one other thing here. I want to set up the accuracy. So there are a lot of different choices here. What is it? Okay, so we have a lot of different choices, and you want to sort of be careful in a real environment which of these choices you take, because the frequency of these updates is going to be a big influence on how much power you're actually going to be used. So what the heck, I'm going to say nearest 10 meters because this is just bogus anyway. All right, so we set up the delegate of the location manager, we set the desired accuracy, and we're pretty much good to go. All we have to do now is actually set up those delegate methods. And the delegate methods are, of course, what we're actually going to use to find out what the location is and then move along. So I will do that, but I think I should change this action first. All right, so this is the action that's tied to the button. And the idea here is that whenever an application wants to request permissions to do various things, it should at the very least request those at some sort of user initiated action, right? We want the user to sort of understand how and when and what exactly we're asking permissions for. So that's why I've tied it to a button. You don't always have to do that, but it's sort of good practice. All right, now that I've got this here, so what I can do is I can check to see what the current authorization status is. It's a location manager. I've had too much caffeine. Authorization status, I think. Oh, I see what this is. So this is actually not an instance method. It's actually a class method, or at least you call it that in Java or something like that. It's a static method here. All right, so if this authorization status is authorized always, then we're good. All right, if we've already authorized this so that it's always going to allow our application to access the location, even if we're not in front, everything's good. Or CL location manager.authorization status equals authorized when in use, which is sort of a more common thing. This is what we really want. While we're in use, we should be able to do this. Now, in a real location tracking app that's going to keep a GPS track and then upload it to Strava or something like that, you want to do this always, right? Because you want to be able to track it even when we're not in front, even when we're not possibly running. Actually, I'm not really sure about that. I'll have to get back to you on that. All right, so if we have these things, then we are good. Then all we want to do is start tracking. All right, so let's just call start tracking, which is a function that I haven't written yet. So let me just put a stub because I'm not sure exactly what's going to be in that yet. Okay. If this is not the case, if we are not currently authorized, then we need to request authorization. So location manager.request when in use authorization. That's the one that I'm going to go for. When in use versus use versus always is pretty much the following. When in use means that when you want to start tracking, you do that in the foreground. But even if your application gets put into the background, like you bring something else up instead, it can continue tracking, and that's fine for most cases. The difference between that and always means that if we set up some sort of tracking hook into the system saying that we want GPS coordinates whenever a new tick comes out, even if our application has been closed by the user, it can be woken back up in the background to respond to those events. So this can be a useful thing to do with tracking for bikes, for instance, because we might just start up a bike tracking and then we're going off on some long ride and messing around with texting while we're riding. We end up deleting, or not deleting, but closing down the application by mistake. Who knows? But the point is, it'll be able to still be woken back up to respond to new GPS status events if it's always, all right, authorized always. Authorized when in use does not do that. If we actually close down the application, then we stop getting any sort of events, which is fine for most cases. All right, so here we request this, and presumably we'll get, I'm not going to do our checking here, but presumably the user will say yes. Okay, so that's good. Now, in start tracking, then what we want to do is actually call from the location manager to start updating location. Okay, start updating location. And what that's going to do is then call location manager did update locations, and that's something that we need to look at. Okay. So we need to define these delegate methods. The first one is location manager did change images. Okay, the one that I'm looking for here is one that says we did, there it is, did change authorization. Okay, so they're going to be basically two different delegate methods we want. One of them is going to allow us to get locations. That's did update locations. That's this one here. So let me just select that one and put that one in here first. The other one, though, is did change authorizations. Okay, and the authorization status change just means that it's changed. Whether towards more permissive or less permissive, we don't know. We have to actually check at that point, right? And then based on that, we can possibly start tracking or not. So what we want to do, and maybe I could organize this differently, but basically copy this stuff. All right, so if the change, some sort of change occurs, and we check in and we're authorized always or when in use, then we go ahead and start tracking. Everything's good. All right, the other thing that we want to do is then, what did I do? Okay, is actually start tracking. And if you look at the parameters here, we get the location manager. Well, we already know what that is, and we get some locations. Now, this is actually an array of locations, and the reason you have an array is because there's a periodicity of the updates that comes in, and ideally, each one of the updates that's coming from the GPS tracker is going to cause us to get an update and cause us to be told about it. And so we would just basically have one location here. But there are various different reasons, you know, other things going on in the machine, other things taking up all the cycles so that we don't have time to always update this application. We might have multiple new updates of the location stacked up. All right, and so we're going to have an array here, and they're put into this array in the order that they arrive. So the one that we want to look at, if all we want to care about is where we currently are, is going to be the very last one. All right, so I have a location up there, previous location. So let's first of all say if the loc, because what I'm trying to do here is I just want to display how far we've moved each tick, basically. So if the loc is equal to the previous location, means we've already had one, then I can figure out what the distance is and then do something about it. All right, so if the loc equals, so I have a previous location. So then I'm going to say let the latest be equal to locations dot last, and then let the distance be equal to location. This is the previous location. Dot distance to latest. okay? And this is going to give us a distance in meters. Okay, it's going to give a distance in meters. And now we have this distance, we can do something about it. We can say whatever we called our outlet, label outlet, text would be equal to, I'm actually going to use a different way to create a string here because I haven't used this before and it's very useful. For those of you who've used things like C, you've used printfs before, it's an incredibly useful way to do things. I'm going to use it here. And the way you do that is you use string format, and then you have all your arguments afterwards. There are a couple other different ways to do it. Now, for the most part, this is going to be very similar. All right, so if we just want to have a floating point number here, I can do %.1f just like before. But let's say I want to add a string in here. Normally I would say %s. Don't do that, it will cause your machine to crash. So what you want to use instead is @s. I think that's it. No, it's %at. That's what it is. Okay, so I have distance here. That's the first argument. And the second one is going to be meters. All right. Now, this is all the case if I already have a previous location. If I don't, then I'm just going to say previous location is going to be equal to latest. And for that to work, I need to put latest up here. And then I'll do something similar to this, except it's just basically going to be 0 meters. All right. Let's see what I got. Okay, up comes the machine. And now my app. Boom. That is a good looking dude. This, by the way, was in Glacier National Park on Going to the Sun Road. Very cool stuff. All right, so nothing's happening so far because we don't have location services turned on. We haven't requested permissions. So I can request permissions by hitting this, and nothing happened. Why is that? Well, we have an error message back here. So let's see what that error message has to say. Okay, this app attempted to access privacy-sensitive data without a usage description. Info's plist must contain an NS location when in use description key with a string value explaining how we're going to use that data. Okay, so fine, I can do that. And what that means is we have to come back to this info plist and just add a new key in this dictionary here. This is the main information property list dictionary. So I could just click point plus here and the previous one, and I get a new one. I've already copied what that should be. And then the string is whatever I want to display to the user to have them give us some permissions. So what do I want to say? Because we want to track you. All right, now let's try it. Bring it up, hit location services, boom. Allow bikes to access your location while you're using it because we want to track you always. So obviously you want to put a slightly nicer, more informative prompt there, but fine. We're going to say allow. When we do that, poof. Now we're getting tracks. You might wonder why we're getting 600 meters every second or so. That's a goodly amount. And the reason is because I was messing with this before. And in the simulator here, we can simulate various different things. We can simulate city runs. All right, if I say city runs, then we're going to be going much more slowly. Although that's still relatively fast. This guy must be booking. We can simulate bike rides, freeway drives. I'm not sure what Apple is. Maybe Apple is like walking around inside of apples. Yeah, that's exciting. Let's try bicycle ride. Okay, we're not moving very fast. All right, so that's doing it. It's doing pretty much everything we want. Now, the only other thing I want to show today, since I don't have a huge amount of time, is I want to show how I would sort of take this to the next level and compute distances to various interesting places. So what you might think of is, for instance, my house, my work, that sort of thing. Maybe I want to know how far away I am. And then later on, I can do things like geofencing to actually get notifications when I arrive someplace, or I could get driving directions, etc. All right, so to do this, then I want to come back into View Controller. And what I want to do is have a list of locations that I might want to go to. And the way that you can do this a lot of different ways. A lot of people do it programmatically, but sort of the iOS way of doing things is to use these property lists. And I wanted to use that today just because we haven't used that before, and I haven't shown you how to actually create these things. So to do it, we hit New File, but instead of a Swift file, we scroll down and we choose Property List. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff down here. GPX files, if you want to create them, sprite kit scenes, tiles, etc. Property List is what we want. And we'll call this Places. So now we get a places.plist. And what this is a dictionary, just like I showed I had in the previous slide. In this dictionary, I can create items. And each of these items can just be a key in a string, or it can be a key in a dictionary. And I want to use key in a dictionary. And the reason is because I want to be able to read these things in as classes, where the class is actually going to be instantiated with latitude, longitude, and name. So each one of these is going to be a dictionary. And in this dictionary, I want to have, excuse me, I want to have the name, I want to have the latitude, I want to have the longitude. Okay, so the name would be something like home. Latitude would be, I don't know, 38.3. Longitude minus 42. Who knows? And then what I can do is I can create multiple items like this. And then I can actually hopefully read those back in from within the application. So rather than laboriously type this stuff in, I'm going to delete this property list that I just created because I have another one that I already created. And just like Logan, I have this places list here. And this is not a very elaborate one either. It just has 3 different places. If I look at it, it's pretty much the same thing. Each one is going to be what I had before: name, latitude, location, longitude. All right. So now that I've got this in the plist, I need to actually be able to read this. Okay, so how do I do that? Let's create a function to do it. Fun. It's not that fun. Okay, so here's a function to do this. But before I can do this, I actually have to have a class. So what I'm going to be doing is, it's just like with JSON. Property lists are very analogous to JSON. They're actually different internal structured, but you encode and decode them very similarly. So what that means is that I need a class in order to actually specify how to decode what comes in that piece of opaque data, which again doesn't have any self-describing characteristics. So to do this, I want to create a new class, and I'll just create it in a new file here, and we'll call this place. All right. I say class, but what I really mean is structure. A place is going to have the name. I'm going to have latitude. And this is going to be a double. And I have a longitude. And I really want an array of these because I have those 3 different items. I want an array, but you can't just read things in as arrays very often. It's often not the right way to do it. So what I want to do is create a type alias that makes that a little bit easier. So type alias, same places, is going to be equal to an array of place. Okay. So now that I have this places class, sort of pseudo class, I can create a variable up here and it's going to be of type places. And even though this is a type alias, it sort of looks like a class. I can still set it equal to an empty array because places is just an alias for this array thing. All right, so now I have a variable places that I can load stuff into, and I need to just go ahead and do it. So let me first of all load this stuff up. So if the property list URL, let's call it that, it's going to be equal to the bundle.main URL string extension. Then places is going to be equal to property list decoder. Why is that not popping up? Is it because of other issues? There we go. So places is going to be equal to property list decoder.decode. It's not the initializer I want. I can't see what this is actually doing. Fine. So it's going to be of type places.self. Now remember, this is the same sort of syntax I used before with the JSON stuff in the last demo. So places.self is going to be the type that I'm going to be decoding into, and then where I'm going to be decoding that is going to be from some sort of data. And with data, remember, I can get the data contents of URL. And that URL is going to be what I just have right there. Okay, for all this to work, probably going to have to do a try question mark because this thing does throw. And that's fine. It's not fine. Places is in fact not an optional. So let's make it an optional. So now that's going to work. And which argument are we listening to? The from. That's fine. Okay, so now hopefully we've got places defined. Got to be an instance, right? So I have to actually create an instance to do this. And now what's it saying? Type of expression is ambiguous. Oh, data, content. Okay, it's these optionals that are just killing me. How about that? Call can throw, but it's not marked. Yeah. Place does not conform to this protocol. Of course not. I haven't specified that. So let's come back here and just make this codable, and then we're good. All right. So hopefully at this point we have places. Build. Damn it. Okay. Build failed. Why? Probably because syntax errors. Now it's fine. All right. So this is the loading the plist. I have a URL. I'm using that URL just to get the local file places.plist, which is going to be right there. If that's true, and if I can actually get the data from that URL, which should not be an issue because it's local, then I can use that to actually do this property list decoder. So just to make sure that this works, printed out. It's all going to work except for the fact that I don't actually call out. View did load. Okay. Okay, poof, it's up. You notice this is already working. And the reason it's already working is because we requested the permissions for this application before, and the application permissions don't change unless we tell them to. And what's going on is that when we first get into it, well, we don't actually come here because this only gets invoked as a result of pressing the button. Instead, down here, we get a change authorization notification and everything's good. All right, so this did not actually print because we have nothing there. So there's a good question. Oh, okay, so if we look at these, if we look at the property list here, we have actually capitalized names. If I come over to my place.swift, they're not capitalized. I would bet that that's the problem. So we launch, and if you look right here, we got all this stuff printed out. All right, so it found all three of those in the property list. So this is all you need to do to load one of these property lists. You have to get the URL for it, you turn it into a data, and then you decode that. And all this stuff is optional, so yeah, you can make this a little bit more condensed if you want to. But that's it. All right, so this is working. This is pretty much doing what we want to do. And then the only thing that I want to do is sort of get you excited for next time, maybe, is just add a little bit of pizzazz to this by another button. And this one, bring this in here as well. This is going to be a maps button. Make sure it's big enough. And have it in the middle. And then what we're going to be doing is using this to segue to maps. All right, so to add a map to this application, I need to bring up a view controller right here. And then in this, I need to put a map. Then I need to be able to segue to it. Okay. So now I build this. I'm running. I'm tracking myself around probably Palo Alto or something like that. Hit the maps button and poof, we got a map. Now, the map isn't really showing us anything that we want yet. It's not tracking us. It's not laying over a track on the top of the map, showing us where we were. But this is going to do what we want to do. All right, and we'll take this a little bit further on Tuesday.